Hello, and welcome to the Distillery. I'm your host, Harry Lee Shanglun, and today we have Ronja Sen with us. Hopefully, you popped up. Hey,
Hello, how's it going?
I'm doing all right. This is my first time live streaming, and I have no idea what's going on, but I'm very excited to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm good. A little bit nervous. It's my first time as well, but I'm comfortable with you, Harry.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, we'll muddle through it together. I've got a mug of tea with me. This is my nod towards the distillery. Do you have a drink with you as well?
I do. Alcoholics,
Cheers.
not. Cheers.
Yeah, I feel
What
like we
kind of
could
yours?
engineered it. So, Ronja, I'm really keen to chat with you about a whole host of different things. Something that really struck out in your biography is that your name means color and energy in Sanskrit, as well as in your family's language of Bengali. Um,
Yeah.
how many languages do you speak?
Look, I speak English and I can speak Bengali with my family. That's true, but otherwise I have exposure to other languages that kind of just flexes most of the time. But I did some Spanish at uni, Japanese in high school, and because I like grew up watching Bollywood, so a bit of Hindi as well. So yeah, how about
Amazing.
you?
And yeah, I speak English, and then learn French, Mandarin, Auslan, bit of Indonesian badly.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so,
Auslan.
yeah, I guess like we're both interested in languages and the ways in which it can change the way that you think or can bring you to a sense and understanding of culture. Uh, how has your relationship to your culture and language been over your life? How has that changed or evolved?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I think growing, because I grew up in Australia basically as a kid, and obviously I looked different, um, being a different skin color, and we were like a different world at home. And Bengali was actually my first language. I spoke that before I learned English, but the relationship was kind of tricky. I kind of grew up almost embarrassed of it because it's what made me different, and I just didn't like that. I wasn't proud of it at all. I would only speak it very broken with my grandparents, and my parents would like try to encourage me to speak with them in Bengali, and I was like, nah, it's lame, man. Whereas, of course, I grew up, discovered, how lovely my culture actually is, and now it's I'm very interested in it, and I try to practice as much as I can. Just by calling grandparents makes them happy too. So yeah,
That's really
so
sweet. Did you call them for like Mother's Day and things?
no, not Mother's Day. I don't know if they understand that concept because it's kind of Western and they're all a little older. But most recently, we had the New Year's celebration in a lot of states of India, so I called them for that and things like that. So yeah.
And I'm really interested, you're saying that you grew up and you were different, and that implies some sort of hegemonic norm of like whiteness of English language in Australia that is supposed to be multicultural, but
Mm.
often doesn't feel that way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because yeah, we definitely pride ourselves on multiculturalism, and everywhere you look, you see people from every background. Even if they are white, they have a different European or ethnic background. So yeah, it's definitely fascinating growing up with those kinds of that heritage. Uh,
Totally.
yeah, yeah. Was that your experience as well?
I think mine was slightly different because I moved in and out. So I lived here until I was 6, and then I moved to Indonesia,
Mm.
and then United States of America before returning here. But I guess I had a similar thing of feeling a bit embarrassed of my culture or certainly estranged from it or divorced from it. And then now trying to either come back or reclaim, reconnect. I'm really curious about how that functionally has been happening for you and also what sparked that.
Hmm. I definitely resonate with what you just said as well. That was my experience as well. Um, what sparked it? I'm not really sure, actually. I think it may have been a trip that my mum and I did together just after I finished school. It was like I didn't have a brain all through high school, and then suddenly I turned 18, or like, yeah, and I was like, oh, I can think for myself suddenly. That's how I feel. But my mum took me on just like a mother and daughter trip to India, except instead of just always going to where my extended family live, which is Calcutta, she took me around a little bit, so not too far around, but we just went to New Delhi, which is where I was born, because she wanted to show me where I was born. And then we did because of geographical distance, it's very close by, we went to the Taj Mahal and saw the Red Fort and all of this just beautiful Persian history, the Mughal Empire in India, and like all of the remnants of that in Agra and in New Delhi. And that was really powerful for me. I think for the first time then, I was like, whoa, this place is lit. Like there's so much history that no one knows about. And well, I mean, at least 1 billion people know about it, but in the West, it's not like we study the Mughal Empire. I don't think like 90% of my friends wouldn't know what that is. So yeah, it was just like a sneak peek into a whole world that I just had neglected. And I suddenly became I started exploring it more and more and started becoming really proud of it. So yeah.
It's pretty wild, like you mentioned, oh, 1 billion people already knew about this, but we're
Yeah.
so sheltered from anything that isn't Anglo-centric.
Yeah, that's true. It's interesting what the effect that the West has on itself and also the world, because it's like when you're in the West, or what I mean is English speaking countries, you focus on English speaking culture, but then also it's somehow impacted, or probably through colonialism, has impacted Asia and Africa and South America, where everyone is up to date with the English speaking world, but they're not up to date with anyone else. Like where we don't know what's happening anywhere else.
Do you think that's changing, or yeah, what do you prognosticate for the future?
I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. I think I think my circle is changing, but that's also because you attract what you like, kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't know what the wider world is doing really. To me, I still hear stories about how people in India, my age, grew up like not wanting to take Indian food to school in India because they preferred sandwiches because it was just like the cooler thing because it was well Western, right? It's not weird Indian food, which is like so strange that would happen in its native country, but I've heard that happens still to this day. Um,
Mm.
yeah, and people prefer to speak English, and it's a sign of like coolness. I don't know, like I might be generalizing a little bit because I'm not there for the experience, but yeah, I don't know the answer.
I think you're right that the effects of colonization and imperialism have an ongoing presence
Mm,
in a lot of different countries. I certainly think about I guess I'm going to call it inferiority complex of a lot of Southeast Asia, um, that still looks up to whiteness, whether that's literal skin tone and, you know, thinking about lightness as a moral rectitude,
mm,
or literally, I was going to come up with a much more crass phrase, but let's say just looking up to the West. Um, and so, okay, if there are things that you want people to know about Indian culture, presumably, what are those things? What do you want people to know, or what do you wish people would stop misunderstanding?
uh, there's always going to be misunderstandings. I don't know if that will change very quickly, but it's like I wish, along with what I would wish for is the generalizing to stop. I've had numerous, like so many comments in my life about the typical, 7-Eleven owner, taxi driver, Uber driver, like that kind of those comments like are thrown around so often. And it's not that it hurts my feelings or anything, but I do notice it, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe you could learn a little about what else we have to us, or what else that country has to them. Um, but yeah, but in terms of what I'm very proud of in the culture is the attitude of just wanting to celebrate everything. It's very colorful, it's very fun, it's very intimate, and it's like an intimate relationship with life almost. It's like understanding what gratitude means for whatever you have, things like that, which is where perhaps a lot of the commercialized elements of Hinduism, as in like meditation and yoga and all of those practices, the benefits of those is actually quite a strong part of the culture. And yeah, I think a little bit more credit should be given to its origins in the West. Yeah, and the history of everything, the facts about how for so long it's been a secular country, that it's divided up by the spoken language rather than religion or something, more intangible. That's something that's quite cool about it. Yeah, that kind of thing.
So I'm contemplating in particular the things like yoga, right, that you've said are commercial packagings of a rich and deep history and culture, that often then get appropriated or sold neatly. Like thinking about cultural exports of other nations and the ways in which they are both effective and ineffective at doing that, I'm really struck by how some nations exist really as like really strong brands. This might be just a tangent of thought, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm thinking, I guess, about also the depiction of, for example, China versus Japan, and how over time, who's considered cool, who's considered an ally, who's considered classy, who's considered cheap. All those things are very subjective and change through both soft power of the arts and culture as well as economic change. Some of the things that I'm excited about, just riffing on this thought, are to see India, which has already cemented itself as a huge, let's say, technological giant, right? Hopefully that starts to push better representation and understanding
Yeah.
across other spheres as well.
Yeah, totally. I've been thinking a lot about just representation recently. Recently, I kind of started because we went to the Fringe Festival late last year, the Melbourne Fringe Festival, and there was a lineup of a very diverse kind of comedic. There were comedians. They were all stand-up comedians, and it was quite a diverse lineup. There was people of different ethnicities, different sexualities, that kind of thing. It's Melbourne Fringe. One of the comedians was an Indian woman, and she was funny, and I just realized that I had never seen a brown woman on the stage to do like stand-up comedy in my life. I just never seen it. I mean, there's some actresses in Hollywood or whatever, and there's some movies with Indian people, obviously, but many movies, but never in that capacity had I seen a brown woman. And as soon as I saw that, I literally had the thought of like, I could do that too. Like immediately.
Yeah.
And it sounds silly because it's stand-up comedy, but it was just something where I was like, I've never seen like someone who looks like me in that capacity. And suddenly I have, and suddenly I'm like, oh, I've seen that happen. I know it can happen. I could do that too. I should probably like tell her that she had that effect on me. Not that I'm going to pursue a career in it, but it just made me realize the only people I'd seen who looked like me were in the very professional kind of spheres, which is also cool. But obviously, you might know as well, with Asian heritage comes a lot of pressure to perform academically and all of that, which I don't think
Did you feel that growing up?
Yes and no. I think I had it I have great parents. Like I think everything positive that I am in terms of values and just who I am, I really would attribute to my parents. I think of them very positively. There was like an assumption, I think, that when I got into year 12 and mentoring uni and everything, I would go down either law or engineering or medicine, for sure. I remember toying with the idea of psychology, and my dad was just like, I don't think so. So even though like it would just be such a cool profession, and I think a very integral part of future society as well. But I ended up studying law, which is what I am passionate about studying, for various reasons. But I did do law and business to start with, and that was also my dad's kind of, it's commerce. You got to do law and commerce. What's the point of doing law and everything else if you're going to be a commercial lawyer? And of course, as a 17-year-old, I just wanted to save the world, and I was like, I don't know if this is for me. But
I'm just reflecting on how that resonates so strongly with me, but also when I explain to people, yeah, absolutely, there's a lot of pressure and a lot of navigating the subtleties of it. It's not a bad pressure, but it is kind of, I'm not being very articulate about this. When I tell people, oh, my first degree was medicine, the first assumption is your parents forced you into that, which is not true, but is also like they didn't. But also I think there's like layers of subtle expectations and certainly pride and excitement that was the case. And then when they didn't object. And then when I left medicine, it was like, oh, you're really giving that up. It's a sense of this is something very important and prestigious to leave. So the values become clear, and even if they're not explicitly expressed. And then at the same time, like it comes from a place of love. And so I understand. So I guess the question here is like, how did you navigate that, which can be a tricky tension, living authentically and being somebody who I think knows kind of the direction in life that they want to take and the things that they're excited to pursue. How did you deal with the fact that you also have to then respect and honor your parents and factor that in?
I'm still learning how to navigate. I don't think I've got it down pat just yet. But I will say, as particularly as I'm, getting older, I'm not that old. I'm in my 20s, but I definitely.
We're so old.
I definitely find that the older I get, so to speak, the more my values seem to align with theirs. In a sense, it's like in the end we just align because they're who raised me, and we have a good relationship. So it's not like anything was too much that I'm going to go against it or go all in or anything. It's just like I feel like I'm at a happy medium, and I happen to be aligned with their, at the end of the day, what their values are. There's still some things where they're like, really it should be this way. Can't think of anything right now, but I know that nuance is there in the relationship. But it's like having gained their trust perhaps has worked wonders, really, for them to be like, right, she's going to be okay, she's doing what she wants, but it's also in a good direction kind of thing in their books. So did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. I'm interested because you started studying law, and something that you were telling me in a previous conversation was that you did this because you were interested in people's stories and in ethics, and that kind of blew me away because usually when people become lawyers, it's to be. I mean, no, actually, sorry. Usually when people become lawyers, it is to save the world, but then they end up becoming corporate lawyers. So I'm interested about your journey and
Sure. I'm not a lawyer yet. I will say that I want to be, but I've only done like step 1 out of however many there are, which is get the degree. So, but that is what my aspiration is. But I will say, sorry, excuse that. Someone hooning in my.
It's the police.
Police. Yeah, so I started law at university because it was something I was interested in, and it was the only degree that I was like, right, this A satisfies what I am interested in, and B will please my parents in it. Not please them, but like, again, they're not going to object to law if I'm a lawyer. So it worked both ways. Uh, I started off with law and business, like my parents wanted me to, but then what happened was my dad's in finance, so I got him to do my accounting assignments, a lot of them, and didn't really learn much.
I should have done that because I failed accounting.
Well, because I probably tell him this, but he probably thought he was just helping me out, but I really didn't learn a thing, and I did all right in the course, but I didn't learn anything, and also economics, macroeconomics. I don't think I passed it. So then I was like, this really isn't for me. It wasn't that I'm a dummy. It was just that I just didn't understand why I was studying it. And now I'm like, economics, wow, that's very interesting. But at the time I was like, I don't do this. I don't get it. Numbers, I don't know. So then I changed into international relations, which is more like socio-political science, really. So that was my journey there. So it was kind of like, look, I failed. I can't do this. I'm not going to do it, kind of thing. And they were like, right, maybe you shouldn't have anything to do with maths. So that was the journey there. Because it's like fail versus, do a degree for the sake of it.
I like your articulation that you weren't doing well at it because you didn't know why you were doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important, right? I remember at orientation day, the dean of the law school at the time said in a lecture, like, half of you won't be here at the end of your law degree because you won't know why you're doing it. So whenever it gets hard, stop and ask yourself why you're here. And I had those moments for sure. I'm sure everyone does. So yeah, I think why is very important.
Do you have a better grasp of why at this point in time?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry. So to link back to the interest in people and ethics and all that. So the law is based, to me, in a very simplistic sense, is based on the ethics that govern, like the innate ethics that govern humans. But also, there's arguments for and against that if you really want to get into the jurisprudence of it all. But basically, so that's where the ethics come in. And then I'm interested in people and the law being like a governing moral compass for society, for all of humanity. That's basically like, I'm like, whoa, what's that about, kind of thing. So that's
so
basically.
you're sorry, go on.
No, you go.
You're drawing up this idea that there's a sense of natural law of the ethics and rules that govern us as human beings with consciences and values that should ideally be shared towards a better society. And then there's the application of that law to people and how it affects their happenings and going abouts, and often their very lives. I think this is a really interesting distinction because when I'm critical of the law, it's mostly in that latter category of the application of the law. And I see a lot of miscarriage of justice. And I go, well, this is because the law does not align with what I think should be, or like what is fair and just. Is that something that you would want to approach and work on? Or what are the relationships that you have with that?
At this stage, I mean, sure, one day I definitely like to form opinions on it. But at this stage, I'm just like kind of hungry for anything. So I'm just like, whatever I get, I'm like, ooh, ooh, ooh. So maybe one day. I have other fields of law that I'd like to explore. Yeah, but what you were saying kind of not reminded me, just made me think that the law isn't just like one and only end all. It's like a moving, growing entity, I feel, that can be reformed. And you can pass the law, then you can repeal it, you can improve it, all of that. And the interaction between law and what what society believe, but also how, like, it's like the chicken or the egg, which comes first, and is the law based on society? Is the society based on the law? They're probably intertwined. But yeah, that whole relationship is very cool because it's like what you innately feel ethically, which then probably translates to some kind of common sense, is like should be reflected in the law. But then how do you like articulate a law that encompasses those things of like all of society?
Mm.
Who says
This
it's
is
right?
this reminds me of a question you asked me. So I guess your interest in personal stories led to this very cool Instagram project that you are doing, which I'm about to plug now. You can check it out on Instagram at Let's DNM. Can you tell me a little bit about this project that you're?
Yeah, sure. So it doesn't have anything to do with the law, really. So obviously, I've got two little interests there, but this is about people. I love DNMs, which is basically stands for deep and meaningful. They're just conversations that are, emotional and have a bit of depth to them because I really like the authenticity and vulnerability that they bring out. So yeah, it's just like a record of people's stories, I think, or what they believe in, what they're thinking about. Yeah, that's basically it. I just want to chat. It's an excuse for me to talk to people.
It's when I I was on the project and that came out of a long phone call wherein you asked me questions like what are your values, and we ended up talking about how society gets built and what kind of society we want to build. So that's, I guess, the link for me of, oh,
Mhm.
you're interested in people's stories, but that inherently also encompasses their values a lot of the time.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Continue. I just agree.
So I want to flip the question to you, which is, what are the values that you want to profess and practice?
Ooh, there's a few. I haven't done. You spoke to me about having a list of 64 basic human values, going through them, numbering them, ordering them, and seeing which you resonate with. So I haven't done that exercise, but I'm very interested in doing so. But the ones that come to mind are what I like: authenticity, um, being yourself. Like it doesn't really matter what people say about how you live your life slash what you do with it, as long as you are confident and like doing what makes you happy in a strategic way, I guess. Like I don't know, depends what you want, but being authentic, and communication. I think communication and transparency is very important in like every relationship you'll ever have. And intention is really big for me as well. Like critically thinking about things, communicating, being authentic, doing things intentionally and compassionately. Or if you're going to be rude, like just be intentional about it.
Intentional rudeness. I like that. I just
But,
wanted to try that feature out where I get to scroll authenticity, communication, and intention
oh,
along the bottom.
yeah, yeah.
Exciting.
I like things. Yeah. How about you?
Brilliant. Oh, this isn't a show about me.
Oh,
This is a show about you.
yeah.
But
Okay.
very, very briefly, I think those things are definitely things I hold very close to my heart. Integrity and passion, I guess, are what it comes down to for me.
Mm,
Yeah, passion.
yeah, for sure.
Brilliant.
Mm.
Thank you. So I feel like I have a bajillion more questions, particularly asking about what authenticity means and how we construct
Yeah.
it in the context of culture and the friction of living in Australia that is predominantly white. But we'll leave it off for here. And just thank you so much for your time and for being able to dive into these conversations.
No worries. Thanks for having me. I had fun.
It's been a great pleasure. All right, I'm going to kick you off the stream very gently. Let's see if this
Bye.
works. Bye.
Bye.
That was Ronja Sen, and this is The Distillery. Follow along at our website, distillery.site, and you can follow us on Instagram at. See you tomorrow.